HR is not on your side. That's not an accusation. That's a job description. Human resources exists to protect the company from liability, not to advocate for you, not to ensure fairness, to protect the organization from legal and financial risk. The moment you walk into that office believing otherwise, believing HR is a neutral party, a safe space where your concerns will be handled with your best interests in mind, you've handed them something they'll use before you've sat down. There are 7 things people say to HR that feel completely reasonable and cost them everything afterward. I'm going to tell you all 7, and at the end, the one move that feels like your best protection and is actually the most dangerous thing you can do in that room. Number 1, I'm thinking about getting a lawyer. This is the most expensive sentence in the HR vocabulary. The moment you mention legal representation, the conversation stops being a conversation. HR activates a different protocol. Documentation becomes formal. Responses become measured and legal adjacent. Every subsequent interaction gets filtered through litigation preparation. Here's what most people don't understand. You have the right to consult a lawyer at any point. You don't need to announce it. The moment you do, you've changed the entire dynamic before you've gathered the information you need. Get the lawyer first, then decide what gets said in HR. Number 2. I've already talked to my coworkers about this. This sentence tells HR the concern has already spread, that it's no longer contained, that multiple conversations are happening they don't control. What gets heard isn't that your concern is corroborated. What gets heard is that information is already in circulation and this situation needs to be managed rather than resolved. Your coworkers are witnesses, not co-complainants. Keep them out of the HR room until you understand exactly what you're filing and why. Number 3, I just want this to be off the record. There is no off the record in HR. When you say this, when an HR professional nods, when the conversation feels relaxed and informal, you are still talking to a company representative whose obligation is to document disclosures that create organizational risk. If what you've said constitutes a reportable concern, they are obligated to act on it. The documentation will reflect that the disclosure was made, even if the conversation felt casual. The off-the-record request doesn't protect you. It lowers your guard at exactly the moment your guard should be highest. Number 4. This is just between us. I don't want to make a formal complaint. This is the statement that most consistently produces the opposite outcome. When you disclose something serious and simultaneously ask for it not to be formal, you create a legal problem HR cannot solve the way you're asking. Certain categories of disclosure trigger mandatory investigation requirements regardless of whether you want to proceed formally. HR cannot unknow what you've told them. So HR acts on the disclosure anyway. But because you signaled you didn't want a formal process, you have less control over how it unfolds, less input into the investigation, less protection through the formal process you opted out of. You asked for informal. You got formal, without the procedural protections that come with filing correctly. Let me tell you about a woman named Serena. Serena was a senior account executive at a marketing agency. In her 4th year, a new director joined. Within 3 months, she had documented 17 instances of behavior she believed constituted harassment. She went to HR. She told them she just wanted it to stop. She didn't want to make a formal complaint. She didn't want to be labeled difficult or put her job at risk. HR told her they heard her. They'd look into it informally. The investigation happened anyway. It had to, legally. But because Serena had asked for informal, she wasn't notified of the process, wasn't interviewed formally, wasn't given access to the findings. The director received a private conversation. Nothing was documented in his file. Nothing changed. 3 months later, Serena was placed on a performance improvement plan. She went back to HR, this time formally, this time with a lawyer. The case took 18 months, she won, but 18 months of a formal filing on day 1 might have prevented. The informal request didn't protect her. It left her exposed at the exact moment she thought she was being careful. Number 5. I'm not sure if this is a big deal, but every sentence that begins this way ends with HR giving your concern less weight than it deserves. This phrase signals that you're uncertain about the validity of your own experience, and HR calibrates its response accordingly. A concern presented tentatively gets investigated tentatively. A concern presented with documentation, dates, and specific examples gets treated as something requiring a specific and documented response. You do not need HR's validation to believe your own experience was real. Walk in knowing what happened. State it clearly. Let HR decide how to categorize it. Don't pre-categorize your own experience as probably not serious. Number 6, my manager told me to come here. When your manager directs you to HR, they've already had a conversation you weren't part of. The context has already been framed. The narrative has already started. You are walking into a room where the first version of the story is already there. It just isn't your version. HR conversations initiated by management on behalf of an employee are structurally different from conversations initiated directly. The power dynamic, the documentation protocol, the follow-up process, all of it shifts based on who initiated contact and why. If your manager is sending you to HR, the first question to ask is whose problem you're solving by going. You are always allowed to take time before having the conversation. You are always allowed to ask what it's for before agreeing to it. Number 7, I've been keeping a record of everything. This shocks people because it sounds like the right move. It is the right move. Saying it out loud in that room before you know what you're doing with it is the wrong move. The moment HR knows you have documentation, they need to manage that documentation. If your records are contemporaneous, detailed, and credible, they represent potential evidence, and the company's legal obligation is to understand what exists and what it says. Your documentation is leverage. Leverage works best when the other party doesn't know exactly what you have. The moment you announce it, you've shown your hand before you've decided what game you're playing. Let your documentation sit where it is. Let it inform your confidence without becoming the subject of the conversation. If you escalate formally, let a lawyer determine what gets disclosed, when, and how. Now, the thing I told you most people never figure out. The move that feels like your best protection, the thing almost everyone does when they want to be believed, is full, immediate, unfiltered disclosure. Tell them everything. Get it all out. That impulse is human, and it is the most expensive thing you can do in that room. Because every piece of information you offer before you understand how it will be used is now theirs to use as they need to, not as you need them to. The most protected position in an HR conversation is specific, documented, and limited. Say what you came to say. Don't explain beyond it. Don't contextualize beyond it. Answer the questions you're asked, not the ones you imagine they might ask. The employee who walks in having spoken to a lawyer with a written account of specific incidents and dates, having said nothing to coworkers, with no previous informal disclosures, knowing exactly what they will and won't say. That employee is in a completely different position than the one who walked in, trusting that transparency would be rewarded. Transparency is rewarded in relationships. HR is not a relationship, it is a process. At the beginning of this video, I told you HR is not on your side. It doesn't mean everyone in HR is acting in bad faith. It doesn't mean you should never go. It means the structure has priorities that don't automatically align with yours. And knowing that before you walk in is the difference between using the process effectively and being processed by it. Go prepared, or don't go yet. Those are your two options. Everything else is expensive.